If we get into the advanced aspects of it, it's gonna throw them off, and it's also not part of the course. Afterwards, towards the end, if we have time, if you have questions, we can get into that. But the whole concept, the reason for this course is to get people started on how to approach a birth chart, because the internet has a lot of information on what sun does in the fifth house, what sun does in the second house. Okay, and here's a good example. Venus is considered phenomenal in the seventh house, right? Or no? But for a Sagittarius ascendant, it can cause a divorce. So it's not always a clear-cut answer. It depends what your ascendant is. It depends on what your chart is looking like. Chantal is back. Okay. Any other question? Basic question? Um, any other question related to the course itself? What you're expecting? What you can expect? No? Okay. So how about we just start looking at the houses, okay? I'm gonna start sharing my screen on the houses. How many people have no idea about the houses? Better, thank you. How many people? Okay, don't be shy. This course is for you. Don't be shy if it's, you know what I'm trying to say. Okay, okay. Half the people I can't even see, but okay. So we'll get into the houses now. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen so you can see my PPT. Can you see my PowerPoint, guys? Yes, no, yes, yes. Okay, thumbs up.
Yes, you can.
Thanks. So here's your so this is what basically the birth chart looks like, okay? This is the Indian birth chart. You probably, I don't know if you're into the Western astrology, it looks slightly different. It's circular. No, okay. So this is your house. These are your houses. Okay, so this is your first house. Can you see my cursor? My cursor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is your first house. Okay. First house, second house, third house. The houses will move in a counterclockwise fashion. Okay. We'll go into what the first house and second house and third house each represent. But keep in mind that every house, it doesn't matter what aspect of your life, whether it's your marriage or if it is your house, property, money, in-laws, your entire life will fit in these 12 houses. Okay. We're not going to go into deep knowledge, but I'm going to give you just a very basic understanding of what the houses represent. And when you're asked the question, where to go to find the answer. Simple as that. Okay. This, as I made it very clear in the chat, this is a practical approach because you can find all the theory all over the internet. Okay. But this is something that's going to help you, especially when you can ask me the questions. Okay. So here's a birth chart. Houses, this is always going to be the first house. This is always going to be the second house. And this is always going to be the 10th house, and so on. Okay? What is going to change in these houses are these signs. The first sign, the second sign, the third sign, depending on what your rising sign is, these signs are going to change. Okay? The first sign is Aries. I'll share the PowerPoint with you. Don't worry about that. I may even send you the PowerPoints. Okay, so the first house. Okay, the first house, which is this diamond right here, the very first diamond, it is entirely you. Okay, so anyone who's studied astrology would probably know it's your physical body, your appearance. It is you entirely. It's you. It's just, it represents you, how you look, how you behave, how you respond. Okay, it can also, as we discussed in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the class, it represents your health too, because if it's your physical body, it's also going to talk about the condition of your physical body. Okay? Whether it's your health, your behavior, appearance, or how you look. Okay? Any planet sitting in the first house, any planet in this sitting in the first house is going to influence the first house. In fact, that's true for any house. Any planet sitting in any of the houses is going to influence that house. Okay? Say for example, we haven't gotten into what each and every planet does. It's going to be the slide after this. Say Jupiter, for example. If you got Jupiter sitting in the first house, because the first house represents your physical body, it represents your behavior will become like Jupiter, right? Jupiter, you will become a Jupiterian personality. Jupiter is also known as the guru. Just a quick example. We're going to go into the details, the depths and details later. Someone who's got Jupiter in the first house is going to behave like Jupiter. Jupiter is a mentor, is a teacher. You can expect him to give you advice, even if it's not needed, even if it's not wanted. Okay? That's just the nature. If you have a sun in the first house, sun is known as the king. Okay? If you got sun in the first house, you can expect that person to have sun-like personality. Ego, anger, wanting to be center of attention, all that good stuff. That's your first house. Now, if we go to the second house, you're going to see that second house. This is a bit of an advanced thing, but I'll tell you this anyways. The second house from any house will sustain that house. So the second house from the first house will sustain. It's going to be responsible for the sustenance of the first house, okay? So if for the first house is my body, okay? If the first house is me, it's my body. What's going to sustain my body? The two major points are wealth and food, right? I need to eat and I need to earn to be able to sustain the first house. So resources, any sort of resources, whether they are materialistic resources, most often the second house refers to the materialistic aspect of your life, because we need material to sustain our material body. Okay, we're not talking about the spiritual body here. This would be a different house altogether. So in order to sustain our first house, which is our physical body, we will need to focus on the second house. Therefore, wealth. When I say wealth, it is very important to keep in mind, and it's good that you guys are taking notes. It is your earned wealth, something that you have earned yourself. Okay? Unearned money is a different house. We'll get there later. But the second house is the money that you earn. Okay? Second house, as I said, because it sustains the first house, it also represents your food. The food that you eat, your food habits. Okay? The planet sitting in the second house will also tell you what kind of foods you like. Okay? It also represents your family. Okay? Because even your family, believe it or not, it helps you in sustaining you. It also, the amount of things that a house represents, there's no end. There's no end to how many things will represent a house. We will focus on the main things. Again, the list is endless and you can find all that on the internet. The entire family, okay? So when I say entire family, what do I mean by entire family? When I say entire family, it's your dad, your mom, brother, sister, your dad's brother, your grandfather, okay? In Hindi, it's called kutumb, which means the entire family, okay? It's not your immediate family. That's a different house. We'll get there. It's not your wife, kids, who you live with. This is your entire family, okay? The planet sitting in the second house will not only tell you what kind of speech you have, okay? If you have malefic planets, we'll get into what malefic planets are, what benefic planets are. If you get a malefic malefic planet in your second house, it can show that you have a rough speech, okay? Mars, for example, is considered one of the malefic planets. If you have Mars in the second house, you can have a rough speech. You will see in the second set of slides that the sun, for example, represents authority figures. So if you have sun in the second house, it will show that you have an authoritative speech, right? You got Jupiter in the second house. Jupiter is a mentor, guru. Again, he's always going to talk about what you should be doing, how you should be doing things, because that's just the nature of a guru, a mentor, right? A mentor. So we cover resources, wealth, kind of speech you have, food habits, and it's the entire family. If more comes to mind, just take notes as we go on. I'll be adding more and more as things come to mind, but I don't want to overflow you with too much information. I'm just trying to keep things simple. The third house becomes your communication. Okay, how you communicate. The second house, there is a misconception. Okay, there's misunderstanding between the second and the third house. I want to make it clear that the second house is how you communicate, your speech. The quality of your speech is the second house. What you communicate is the third house. So what you say to others and how you say it in terms of like how you present yourself, that is the third house. The second house is the quality of your speech. What you communicate, what you're delivering is the third house. Short travels. If I had to put a kilometer range on the on what short trips or short travel means, it could be, I would say it's up until about 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers, considered short distance travel. Okay, 100 kilometers up to 150 kilometers. Okay, it's short distance travel. Your neighborhood is also the third house. Okay, your neighbors are the third house. Anything within the close vicinity. What's near your house? It can also be seen from the third house because it's your short distance vicinity, what's around you, where you live, okay? Younger siblings are seen from the third house. Planets sitting in the third house, as I said, planets sitting in the third house, planets sitting in any house are going to influence that house. Mars in the third house can give you siblings that are Martian or Mars-like. One thing that's not included in this list is courage. Hello, thank you for the session. I had this question. Is this info applicable to Lagna or Navamsha chart, or is it both? Julie, this is we're talking about Lagna chart, okay? We're not gonna get into divisional charts, Navamsha, Dashamsha, and all that good stuff. That's advanced level. This is just, but to give you an understanding, whatever rules you're applying in the Lagna chart, we will be discussing the divisional the Lagna chart or the D1 the D1 chart, most of the rules you are able to apply on the D9 as well. Okay, but let's just focus on D1. Thanks. So where were we? Siblings, younger siblings. Okay. It can also show you a relationship with the younger siblings. Okay. Change of residence. Why is the third house the change of residence? Here's another rule you should write down. A house, any house, the 12th from any house, okay? The 12th house from any house will almost cancel slash negate the qualities of the house. I'm just going to switch to the next house to explain to you why change of residence is seen from the third house. If you go to the fourth house, okay, the fourth slide over here, the fourth house is your residence. So the third house, which is 12th, okay, so if you count from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12th house from the house of your residence is going to cause change of residence. Basically, it's going to take you away from the fourth house. Therefore, the third house represents change of residence. In fact, the third house also means any sort of a move. Okay? If you're moving, change of residence, if you're moving, if anyone was to ask you, when can I expect to move? Right? Whenever you see the time period of the third house, you can warn or tell them that the third, when it's the dasha or the time period of the third house, is when you can expect to move residences. Okay? Because the third house also shows travel, short distance travel, it can also show simply traveling. Traveling as in when you're going from point A to B, when you're driving, whenever you're in movement, any sort of a movement, okay? Because fourth house also represents you being at rest. So the 12th from the fourth house can also show the opposite of that, which is movement, being in movement. Okay, so another thing that is very, very, it's a big component of the third house is documentation, right? So documentation, because the documentation is a huge way to communicate, whether it's your emails, whether it's physical documents, it will be seen from the third house. As things come to mind, as more and more comes to mind, I will share it. But those, whatever I'm sharing with you, those are the most common. When you get asked questions, it's most often it's going to be about these points. When you get questions thrown at you, it's going to be most of the time it's going to be about money, profession, health, marriage. Okay, most of the time, property. So when can I expect to move? When can I expect to move? You can look at the third house, fourth house, and so on. Okay. So the third house was your younger siblings, as we had discussed. The fourth house is your mother. Okay. Because the fourth house is your mother, it can also tell you other traits about the fourth house if you focus on the concept of mother. Nurturing can also be seen from the fourth house, right? Mother gives you comforts, so comforts, luxuries, any sort of convenience is seen from the fourth house. Vehicles, if you think about it, is also a form of convenience, right? You can either walk to your grocery store or you just take your car, so it's a form of convenience. Vehicles, luxuries, So remember when we spoke about the second house, we said it is your entire family, which is also known as Kutumb in Hindi, which you probably don't need to know, but the Indian folks sitting here, they will be able to relate. Second house shows your entire family, whether it's your uncle, your grandfather's uncle, grandfather's brother, entire family. The fourth house will also represent your family. But because it's your residence, it is your domestic environment, it is the family that you will be living with. So it's basically, in other words, it is your immediate family. Okay? If you're living with your parents and your sister, then that is your fourth house currently. If you're living with your wife and two kids, and then that's your fourth house. Basically, the fourth house is your domestic environment. Okay. Is there any questions up until this point? Let me. Frick. Any questions up until this point? You can. I cannot see everyone's. Okay, Kevin, 1 second. Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
If a house is completely blank, what would that mean?
Sorry, say that again. Kevin, you just broke it. I can't hear you. You're freezing.
Oh, you just froze.
Yeah, you just froze. What's your question? If you keep freezing, I'll just ask you to. I'll just ask you to maybe send
Yeah,
me the.
yeah, you were. Anyway, I'll ask again. If a if a if a house is completely blank, as in no planets there, what would that mean?
We'll get into that. Right now, we're just talking about what the houses represent.
Okay, okay.
If we jump from one thing to the other, it's just gonna confuse stuff. If someone is living alone, then even immediate family would be someone. Okay, sorry, Kevin. If there's no planet sitting in a house, you will still get the results of the fourth house. Okay, we'll get into it later as to how to analyze when there's a planet sitting in the house, when there's no planet sitting in a house. Whether or not there's a planet sitting in a house, you're still gonna have a domestic environment, right? You're still gonna. I'm not gonna say you're gonna own a house. I'm not talking about you. I'm not saying everyone's got a fourth house in their chart, but that doesn't mean everyone's gonna own a house because it represents residence. But the planets will tell you the condition, okay, of your domestic environment. It'll tell you the condition of your domestic environment. That's more important to take from this point that I'm trying to tell you is we're gonna get into what are benefics and what are malefics. Okay, planets that make your life easy and planets that make your lives difficult. Okay, we're gonna get into that later. Okay, I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can. Fourth house is your domestic environment. Shruti has just asked if someone is living alone, then even immediate family would be house. Family would be house. Shruti, basically, if you're living alone, then it is just you. Okay, if you're living alone, it's your residence. If you're living alone, then that's just you. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you don't occasionally have friends over. Okay, as we proceed on to other houses, where you will see the 11th house represents your friends. So when you see a connection between the fourth house and the 11th house, it will tell you whether there's going to be a huge influence of your friends in your domestic environment. Could be a positive influence, could be a negative influence. Options are endless, okay? But to answer your question, if you are living alone, it's you. It is your domestic environment. If it's you living two other spirits, then it's you three. Okay? I'm trying to see if I can. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see you guys and see if anyone's raising their hands. So up until the fourth house, now that I can see everyone, who's all any questions up until the fourth house? No. Okay. The fifth house. Can you guys see hold on. Let me just start shares. Just start sharing again. Can you guys see my slide?
Yes.
Great. Okay, the fifth house is the house of creativity, okay? Children are a form of creativity because you're creating your children, kind of technically, right? So the children, your creativity. Your intelligence is also seen from your fifth house. Okay? If you have malefic sitting in your fifth house, it's going to alter your intelligence and it can alter your intelligence in a negative way. If you have benefics sitting in the fifth house, it can help you with your intelligence. If you have malefics sitting in your fifth house, it can tell you the behavior of your children. Okay, specifically your fifth house, specifically your first child. Okay, even though the fifth house it's the prime house for children, it also represents the first child. Okay, I'm gonna give you a little trick here. And the trick is the first child is your fifth house. The second child is your seventh house. Third child is your ninth house, and so on. If you decide to have more, you can go all around the chart. Anyways, but the fifth house represents your children, even though it's your first child, but it shows your children. It's also the house of your prime education. Okay? Prime education. I did not talk about higher education. Your prime education up until high school. It's not your post-secondary. So malefic sitting in your fifth house. It can cause issues in your primary education. It can happen. Planets sitting in your fifth house can also help you decide what kind of education, primary education, you should take. If someone comes to you, hey, I'm trying to find out, my son's in grade 10 and 2 more years before he decides to go to university, what should he take? This house is going to tell you what's going to work best for him, right? Whether if you want your child to be an engineer, if you want your child to be an engineer, but I see Venus in his fifth house. Venus has absolutely nothing to do with engineering. Venus is a very creative planet. I'd tell you maybe you should focus on arts or music. Okay? Fifth house. Another thing I want to tell you guys is, as we had just discussed a few minutes ago, the 12th house. The 12th house from any house is going to alter or kind of damage or alter, damage, negate the characteristics of any house. So say if sixth house, for example, just letting you get it. Sixth house also represents your jobs, okay? It's your job. I haven't included it here, but it's also your job. If if you're running the time period of the fifth house, okay, it can disturb your sixth house because the 12th house of any house has a very strong ability to disturb that house. Fifth house has the ability to disturb the sixth house of jobs. So when the time period, which we're not going to get into, but I still want to tell you, this, it's all dasha related. When the time period of the fifth house operates, okay, it can either make you lose your job because the sixth house is your job, right? We'll get into that later. I guess I forgot to add it onto the slide. It can take away your job, or it can change your job, or it can cause conflicts in your job because it is causing disturbance in the sixth house, because the 12th house from any house is going to cause some sort of a disturbance, possibly even termination, right? So the reason I'm mentioning this is because, as I said, the majority of the clients, if you guys ever want to get into professional astrology, it is going to be about profession, money, business, childbirth, relationships, right? So the reason fifth house becomes very important is because it negates the sixth house. I'm getting questions here, sorry. Okay, that's why the fifth house is important to keep in mind, because it hampers or disturbs a very popular or a very important house, which represents your job. And now the sixth house, along with your job, represents your diseases. Okay. Your diseases, your enemies. The reason I said open enemies is because they're open enemies. They'll be in your face. You'll see them, you'll know who they are. They're your open enemies. Hidden enemies is a different house. I'll tell you when we get there. But the sixth house is your open enemies. Right? Therefore, it's also your competition. It represents debts. If you ever get a question, if someone asks you, I'm looking to get a loan, will I get this loan? You'll be looking at the sixth house because it's the house of debt, house of loans, right? Because it's the house of your enemies, it also shows courts, litigation, because that's where you see enemies, right? At a court. Benefic planets are not welcome in the sixth house, right? I will get into that later, is because benefic planets in the sixth house shows that you're too soft when you're dealing with your enemies, because benefic planets are soft in nature. If you have malefic planets, we'll get into what's malefic, what's benefic. If you have malefic planets in your sixth house, it means that you can be harsh and you can intimidate and possibly beat your enemies. Okay? Even if it's a regular fight or if it's a court case, you can beat your enemies. Okay? Sixth house also represents divorces. And we will find out why very soon. Divorces are just also difference of opinion, because difference of opinion is a major cause of a divorce, right? The reason why it can cause a divorce is because it's the 12th house, it's 12th from the 7th house. And when we switch to the 7th house, we can see that one of the things the 7th house represents is marriage. So what is going to disturb, possibly even destroy, depending on how malefically the 7th house is acting, The sixth house can destroy your seventh house, which is the house of marriage. Okay. The seventh house represents any kind of a partnership, whether it's your marriage, which is a kind of a marriage, which is a type of a partnership, marriage partnerships, business partnerships. Okay. It also represents your partners because your spouse is a partner, your business partner is a partner. It also represents business itself. Okay, an independent business is seen from the seventh house. It also represents the other people because if the first house is you, then the seventh house is the person across from you. As you can look at the chart, if the first house is you, the seventh person is the other person. Okay. Why I say that is because it will help you see what kind of people you will be facing in your life. Right? If you have malefics in the seventh house, you will see a pattern in your life that you see if you have Jupiter in the seventh house. Okay, you can expect a Jupiterian wife or a Jupiterian husband, right? If you have Mars in the seventh house, you will see very soon, maybe or maybe not today when we go over the planets. Mars is a warrior, Mars is a soldier. If you have Mars in the seventh house, it can tell you that you can have a warrior or a fighter kind of a spouse. Okay? It can tell you how your marriage can play out, positive or negative, or however you want it to play out. I see a hand raise. Yeah, MGM.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. So the seventh house, you're saying it's the other person. Does
Yeah.
the quote unquote other person always change depending on what the situation is? Like right now, you said it could be in relation to your spouse, but is the other person, can that also be your parents? Can that be also your teacher?
No. Your parents is specifically the fourth and the ninth house. We haven't touched upon the ninth house yet, but your ninth house is your father. So when you're talking about your parents, you're going to look at the fourth and the ninth house, and possibly even the second house because they're also part of your in like the whole family, like the total, whoever exists in your um, whoever exists in your family. Your parents do exist in your family, but if you want to target your mother, only your mother, you're looking at the fourth house. If you want to target your dad, you're looking at the ninth house. If you're looking at your younger sibling, if you're looking at your younger sister, you're looking at the third house specifically. Okay, not the seventh house. Anything outside of your family, include spouse is kind of your family, but it's not your actual family. It's not the family that you bring with you, right? So if you're looking at the seventh house, you're looking at the spouse. Seventh house is also a business, right? So it also represents your daily interactions, day-to-day interactions. So you daily, you're going to a marketplace, say you're going to a store, what kind of people are you going to come across? There's a different kind of astrology, it's called a Hori astrology, where you can get into a specific question that is asked at that very moment, like you can look at the seventh house and see what kind of people you will be coming across today. Okay. That's a different kind of a chart, Hori. Has anyone ever heard of Hori astrology? Hori. Indians call it Horary
How do you,
astrology. Sorry?
how do you spell that?
Horary. That's basically when a question's asked. When someone is asked you a question, you create a Hori chart, and then you can just answer based on that one question. But anyways, to answer your question, the seventh house is not going to represent your mother, your father. It is spouse, business partners, and your daily people that you interact with on a daily basis. Not necessarily, no, not family, other people. Business interactions, okay, are seen from the seventh house. People you deal with. Did I answer your question? MGM.
Yes, thank you. I guess we'll get into later on how to differentiate whether at a given moment we're talking about a partner or somebody from the business. Like,
Yep, it's both seen from the same house, and it becomes, and that's going to come with time. Whether when we're looking at the fourth house, are we talking about your mother, or are we talking about your residence, or are we talking about your vehicle? That comes with practice, right? And the significations of the planet. If moon represents your mother, okay, we'll get into that later, right? We'll get into that later. But if I see that there's a connection between moon and your fourth house, and I see an affliction on moon and the fourth house, and I see connection with the sixth house. Sixth house, as we discussed, was diseases. I'm going to tell the person, be careful, your mother may be getting sick in this time period. Right? Not your vehicle, because your moon does not represent your vehicle. So what I'm trying to say is that as the more you practice, you will understand which aspect of the fourth house it is that we're talking about. Make sense? Okay. Hold on a second. I'm trying to. Any questions about the seventh house? I think we covered the seventh house, right? Eighth house is the most liked house. Not. It's the most feared house. You can probably see why it's one of the most feared houses. Okay. The eighth house represents pain and suffering. As you already know, that the sixth house represents diseases. When you see sixth house come in connection with the eighth house, you can tell the native or the person that the disease you have is going to be a chronic disease, because it is a house of chronic diseases, pain and suffering, okay? It's a house that people typically do not prefer. No one likes, because a house of pain, house of suffering. Any sort of interruptions in your life, any sort of problems that you'll be facing can be seen from the eighth house. Okay. Remember when we discussed the second house, we said it is your earned money, the money that you earn yourself. The eighth house, being the opposite of the second house, is the unearned money. For two reasons. Actually, for one main reason. If when I told you the first house is you, and the seventh house is the other person. If the first house is you and the second house is your income, then don't you think that the second house from the seventh house will become their income? Therefore, you can also say that the eighth house becomes the other person's money. Is it safe to say that the eighth house, because it's second from the seventh house, which is the other person, also known as your spouse, is it safe to say that the eighth house is the money that is currently laying in your spouse's bank account? It is. If this is your money, the second house, if that's your money, then this eighth house becomes their money. And this kind of it comes in very handy when someone's profession is connected to their when someone's profession is connected to their eighth house. And if they come to you and ask you, what kind of profession should I choose? What kind of profession should I get into? And their profession is linked to the eighth house. Is it safe to say that they should be involved in a profession where they are dealing with other people's money? Like people working in the banks, are they dealing with their own money, or are they dealing with your money? Dealing with your money. So if you are in a profession that is strongly connected to the eighth house, we'll get into that later as to how. Your profession will be connected to the eighth house. You can guide them that you better deal with the other person's money, or you can run into a lot of problems and suffering. Okay. Another thing that the eighth house represents is inheritance, because it's also a form of unearned money. Right? Pension, although it's earned money, but technically it's an unearned money, can also be seen from the eighth house. Okay. In-laws, although yes, it is here. Your in-laws are your second house, your eighth house. So if someone's profession is connected to the eighth house is pain, eighth house is suffering. Is it safe to say that you should get into a profession with the in-laws? Very safe to say that you should be getting into a profession where there's at least some sort of an involvement of your in-laws. You have to look at the whole chart. You can't just look at one placement and come to a conclusion that, oh, your profession is linked to the eighth house, therefore, one second. You can't come to a conclusion just based on one point. You have to look at the whole chart. But these are the points that are going to help you come to a conclusion. Looking at the whole chart. Eighth house, because it is the 12th from the ninth house, and because the ninth house is your father. And when the dasha, or the time period of the eighth house is on, is it safe to assume that the native's father could be running into health issues? Because this is your father, right? If you go here, ninth house is your father. Back to the eighth house, problems, diseases. When you are running the time period of your eighth house and it is strongly connected to the ninth house, only when it's strongly connected to the ninth house, you can say, your father should be careful because his health could be at risk. Because it's negating the ninth house. Okay. The ninth house, I haven't really. Ninth house also represents ethical activities, which is not on this slide. The ninth house represents religious and even ethical activities. If the ninth house represents your if the ninth house represents ethical activities, is it safe to say that the eighth house represents unethical activities? Yes, it does. Ninth house. Ninth house is your father. Ninth house are your gurus, mentors. Traditionally, in the good old days, not so often anymore, your father was seen as a mentor, as a teacher, as a guru as well, at least in the Indian heritage background. So, therefore, you can link teachers, mentors, gurus, and father to the ninth house. Does anyone remember what the third house represented in terms of travel?
Short distance.
Yep. So if it's short distance travel, and what could be the opposite of the third house?
Long distance.
Correct. Long distance travels. What's a long distance travel? Toronto to Niagara Falls is not a long distance travel. Toronto to Ottawa would be considered long distance travel. I was very tempted to say Montreal, but I can't say Montreal. There's a reason why I can't say Montreal. I'll get to that when we get to the 12th house. Okay, so it's your long distance travel. The fifth house was your primary education. This becomes your higher education. Okay, post-secondary onwards. But also what we're doing right now is ninth house related stuff because this is essentially higher education. It's not something you learn in schools. It's also known as a divine science, what we're learning right now. So anything that is divine, anything that is higher knowledge, professors are seen from the ninth house. Your luck is also seen from the ninth house. If your ninth house is damaged, then you can say that in your past life, sorry that I'm getting into something that sounds a little more impractical. If your ninth house is damaged, there's some dues to be paid from the past. Therefore, the ninth house is damaged. Your luck is damaged. And what do I mean by when someone's luck is damaged? Say me and Kevin, we go into an exam together, okay? So we're writing the same exam. We both studied the same amount. Kevin's ninth house is very well placed. Benefic planets, connected to good planets, connected to good houses. Okay? Mine may not be as well placed. What does that mean? What that means is that Kevin is gonna get better results with less efforts because your luck is on your side. Simple. Better results, less efforts. Better results, less efforts represents a positive ninth house. Why did I say less efforts? Because when you look at the opposite house from the ninth house, you'll see the third house, which is the house of efforts, both connected. The 10th house, I think majority of you guys may know, represents your profession. May or may not have heard of it. 10th house represents your career, your profession. Okay. If the 10th house represents your career slash profession, then what can we say about the ninth house? If we remember what the 12th house from any house can do, and the 10th house can represent your profession, What can the ninth house mean? Does anyone know? Yes, no, maybe. Okay. Okay. Sorry. The reason I'm saying that is because, as I told you, majority of the people, if you ever decide to get into professional astrology, the questions will be about profession, finance, health. But profession and finance are going to be the main two topics. So it's best if you guys focus on these, okay? If the 10th house represents career and profession, then the ninth house can represent disturbance in your profession. It can represent change in your profession. When the dasha of the ninth house is running and the person is not involved in ninth house related activities, these are the ninth house related activities, and there's a lot more ninth house related activities. It can cause break in profession. It can cause change in profession. It can cause some sort of a disturbance in profession, depending on how badly your 10th house is placed, how badly your ninth house is placed. Okay? Always keep this in mind. 12th house from any house is going to cause disturbance in that particular house. So the house before the 10th house is going to cause disturbance in the 10th house. The ninth house can change your career or disturb it or terminate it. Any questions up until this point? Do we have any questions up until this point? Okay. It is 11:24. So how about we just take a break now and then proceed next Saturday, and we'll finish the rest of the houses next Saturday. Okay, so is there any questions related to anything that I've discussed so far before we end the meeting?
Can you send us the slides as well?
Yep, I'll send you the slide. I'm gonna send you guys an email address right now, and then I will send you the slides.
Great.
You're very welcome, Stella. If someone is living alone, okay. Did you get the email address?
Yep.
Do you recommend a website to create your Vedic or transit chart? Yeah, Tina. So I had sent a message in the group. There's an app called Astro Sage. Okay. I have a professional software. I mean, I do this on a regular basis, but if you don't have a professional software, you can go to different websites, but there's a app called Astro Sage. I'll type it into the chat bar. Lisa Sims, how is your fifth house affected if you don't think you want kids? Lisa, this is a bit of an advanced topic, but I'll tell you this anyways. It's a little advanced. You will see negation. You'll see negation. You'll see conflict. You'll see affliction. Okay, we'll talk about afflictions later. But but there's going to be a link. There's a connection. There's going to be a connection with that affliction and the first house. Okay? There's going to be affliction, and the affliction will be connected to the first house. The reason it will be connected to the first house is because it's your decision. Okay? If someone, for example, is getting lots and lots of marriage proposals, okay? The seventh house may be looking decent because he is getting marriage proposals, but you will be able to see some sort of affliction connected to the first house because the person does not. Because it is your decision. So there will be a connection between that affliction or negation and the first house. Okay, because it's your decision. If it's not your decision, then I'm not going to say you. If someone's not able to have kids, then the fifth house will be linked to other negative houses, like the eighth house. Eighth house represents problems, not delays, but problems, conflicts, surgeries. Okay? We'll get into all that good stuff later. Will this recording be available afterwards when you be emailing it out? Yep, I will be sending out recordings for a very specific reason. I may need to I made a little boo-boo here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the audio recording of this, and I'm going to send you the slideshow, okay? So you will get the recording. You'll have the whole recording. And you will be able to listen to it, all the points, and you'll be able to look at the slideshow and relate to the points. Did I answer your question? Will this recording be available? Okay, thanks. Okay. Yeah, Lisa, the question you asked is a little advanced, right? So I'm gonna try in future not to answer the kind of, I know where your answer is a very good question. Don't get me wrong, it's a very good question, but it's just not it's an advanced question, and I may lose beginners. Okay. And we don't want to lose because we don't want them to feel like we're going too fast or anything like that. But very good question. Anything else? Were you guys able to understand the things I was saying?
Yeah.
How it's good?
Yeah, it was very helpful.
Okay. I need to know how you guys, because so far I've only taught one-on-one, and this is the first attempt. One second, I'm getting a question here.
I feel like it's a lot of information. I don't know if you can share slides in advance before your next session. That way, those who are interested can actually look at the slides and do their own research or whatever too. Like for someone like myself who's new and has an interest in astrology but has no background knowledge. So
Absolutely. I think
helpful.
that's it's a very good idea. I even thought of it, but I didn't get many emails. I had shared my email address and I didn't get any emails. I didn't know can you share stuff on, I think you can share stuff on Meetup, but send me the email. Whoever wants the slides, I think everyone should get the slides.
Yep.
Lance, but I don't know. This is Lance. Does that mean yes, or it means yes? Okay. Just send me your email address. Just email the email address I sent you. I'll send you the slides beforehand, and then you guys can look at it, and possibly even print it out and make notes on that slide. Cool, Anika?
Yes, thank you so much for this session. So interesting. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No problem. I hope it was clear enough. It wasn't throwing people off, because I remember when I was new in this business, I wish someone was able to help me on how to approach a birth chart, because the biggest problem is to be able to look at a birth chart and see where to start. Right? That becomes a problem. And that's what we're focusing on. Focusing on what Venus does in Libra is good. It's decent. It's good. Yeah, like it's exalted. It's not exalted, sorry. It's doing well. But everything will change if you have a different rising sign. A rising sign can change everything. Like I said, Venus in the seventh house is great unless you have a Sagittarius ascendant, and then Venus in the seventh house can give you a divorce. Okay.
Wow.
Good?
Is there are there other names for the houses? Because you said, like you said, Cancer in Libra. So Libra represents a house?
Libra doesn't represent a house. Shruti, right?
Yes.
Libra does not represent, it can represent a house. We will get into that later. Okay.
Mr.
Can you
Kleiner?
see can you see my slide? Can you see the 10th house? Can you see the slide?
Yes.
You can see the slide, okay. I will send you, in fact, I'm going to send you a slideshow right after this. It is very important for you guys to memorize that the first sign represents Aries, which is the first sign. Second house sign is Taurus. Third sign is Gemini. Fourth sign is Cancer. Fifth sign is Leo. The sixth sign is Virgo. Actually, might as well dictate it right now. You guys can write it down. Although I'll be sending you the slideshow. The slide for,
The fifth sign is Leo.
yeah, I'll go over it again. Sorry. The first sign is Aries. Second sign is Taurus. The third sign is Gemini. Fourth sign is Cancer. Fifth sign is Leo. Sixth sign is Virgo. The seventh sign is Libra. Eighth is Scorpio. Ninth is Sagittarius. 10th is Capricorn. 11th is Aquarius. And the 12th is Pisces.
I notice it follows the same sequence, like same order of zodiacs as they fall in a calendar month. Like,
Say that again. Sorry, sis. Say that again, Shruti. What was it?
like Aries is in March and April, and after that, April, May is Taurus. So it's following the same order. Like Taurus comes after Aries, and in the birth chart also it's following the same order.
Yes, it will, and that's why it's given in this this order. Now, this you're not always going to see the number 1 in the first house. I think this is whose question. I think I'm about to answer. Somebody just asked me that these numbers will change. The first diamond here will always represent the first house. Always, always, always. It's the first house. The second box here is always going to be the second house. The third is always going to be the third house, and so forth. But the numbers inside those houses will change. Okay? If this just simply means it's your rising sign, we'll get into that later. But this could become 3. You could have a 3 in this box, and then we're gonna move. Then we're just gonna move in that order. After 3, this becomes 4. What that technically means, if there's a 3 in the first house, the right language would be that you have Gemini in the first house. Third house is Gemini. Third house is ruled by Gemini. We'll get into all that later. It's we're starting from the very basics, guys, right?
Wow.
So the sign in the houses will change, or most likely to change. But we'll get into that later. Okay? They will change. And that's why I said, if Venus is typically considered great in the 7th house, because imagine if there was a Venus sitting in the 7th house right here. What did I say? 7th house is Libra. Sorry, 7th sign is Libra. Venus is ruled by Libra. So if it's sitting in its own house, it's great. But if we had a 9 here, Okay, so let me do this. Let me explain something to you. Do you guys see a blank, like a blank, do you guys now see a blank PowerPoint?
No,
No, you don't? Okay.
This is
Twelfth-
the
I've seen a
12th
12th house.
12th house.
Okay, hold on a second.
We saw the screen change for a moment, then it went back to this 12th house.
That's fine. Okay, now check this out. Do you guys see a different chart now?
No. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now we
Yeah.
do.
Different chart, right? See the numbers
Yep.
changed.
Mhm.
Numbers changed.
How come the numbers changed?
How come the numbers changed? That's a little bit of an advanced topic, Lance. We'll get into that later, right?
Mhm.
This person is no longer, everything has changed now. I'll tell you why. Imagine, again, I'm using the same, I'm using the same, why would Venus in the 7th house be great? Okay, let's go back to what I was trying to explain first, okay?
Yeah.
This is a bit of an advanced topic, but it keeps coming up, so I'm going to answer. Do you see that things have changed? Now you see a VE in the 7th house?
Mhm.
Now you have Venus in the 7th house. Someone just asked me, why is Venus considered great in the 7th house? It's considered great in the 7th house because Venus represents marriage. Okay, we'll get into all that good stuff later as to what planets represent, what they don't represent. Those are called significators, significance of a planet. When a planet that represents marriage sits in that house, it can show good results, right? Because and it's a benefic planet. It's a nice planet sitting in the 7th house. With time, you will learn that the Venus represents attractive spouse. Who doesn't want an attractive spouse? But now we have Venus in the 7th house of marriage. Do you guys agree? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Venus owns 2 houses here. Venus owns 2 signs, Taurus and Libra. Taurus is number 2 and Libra is number 11. Okay? If you go back to your notes, I said Taurus is 2nd house. Sorry, 2nd sign is Taurus. Yes, no?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So Taurus is the 2nd sign. What you don't know, which you will learn in the next class, is that Venus rules Taurus along with Libra, okay? But let's just forget about Libra right now. It owns Taurus. The ruler of Taurus is Venus. Okay? Venus is sitting in the 7th house. Venus is bringing the energy of the 6th house into the 7th house.
I'm sorry, you mean third house? I see VE in the third house.
So do I.
7th house. That's the
Yeah,
7th
but
house.
It's in the
in the
third.
chart, it's showing Venus is in the 3rd, but you're
Yeah.
talking, yeah.
It's the 7th house, 3rd sign. Remember I said the houses never
Oh, yeah.
change?
Okay.
The house will remain where Venus is sitting will remain the seventh house, and that's why we're jumping too fast. I'm just answering this question because it
Wow.
came up it came up a couple times.
Yeah.
Venus is bringing the energy of the sixth house, which because Venus owns Taurus, sign number 2. Taurus is 2. If you go back to your notes, you'll see Taurus is 2.
Mhm.
Do you agree? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Number 2 is sitting in the sixth house. Did we say the sixth house represents difference of opinion and divorce?
Yeah.
The owner of the sixth house, now we're using a little technical language. The owner of the sixth house, which is Venus, is bringing the energy of the sixth house into the seventh house, which is marriage. So what is Venus bringing to the seventh house of marriage? Not miscommunication, but difference of opinion and possibly divorce, because we discussed that divorce is the sixth house. That is why Venus can be negative in a marriage in the seventh house too. Right? So it's again, it's the first class. I don't want to confuse people, right? But listen to the audio and I'm going to send you the slideshow. Okay? Just whatever we're doing right now, just forget it. Just focus on whatever we did before this point. Okay? This is more maybe for people who know a little about houses, signs and so on, right? Okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Now, the 3, 6, 9, 12, I mean, all this number, it's the signs. We're seeing the signs now.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. You're seeing the signs because the houses, it does not matter what sign is sitting in the house. The first house will always be the first house. The eighth
Right.
house will always be the eighth house. And the significance of those houses will never change. The eighth house will always represent pain and suffering.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
The seventh house will always represent business and marriage.
The others, yeah.
Okay. And other people always. It is just that when the numbers change, the rulers of those signs will change, and where they sit, they will bring their results based on what houses they own. Again, the more I talk, the more I lose you.
Okay, I'm more visual. Let me ask you one more question. It says VE Venus in the third house, and I know Gemini is the third.
No, it's not in the third house, it's in the third sign.
Yeah.
So from the very first thing you showed us, that bottom part of the diamond, where it says Venus, that is actually the seventh house, correct?
It's always going to be the seventh house.
You're showing that number 3 is in the seventh house, basically.
Exactly. Gemini has now moved into the third, seventh house. And we will get into that later as to why the numbers move and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's numbers move, but right now today we just covered houses. We're just now getting into signs and whatnot. But I thought houses would be the best thing to cover in the beginning.
No. Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think we'll end this meeting here. Send me an email, whoever wants the PowerPoints, and I will send the PowerPoints for the next next class. Okay.
All right.
Can you show us your email one more time?
Yep. I'll also send my
In the
email
chat.
in the meetup chat. You'll have it there too. And I'm gonna send it here as well again. You get it? Oh, I sent it
No.
to just Maritza, sorry.
No, I didn't get it.
1 second. You got it now. You have to sign up again for next week class or we'll receive Zoom link automatically. I will send you guys a Zoom link. In fact, if you just send me an email, I'll just send the Zoom links to those emails. It'll be easier, okay? And I'll also update those Zoom links, the new Zoom link on Meetup as well. So have it on both. Okay, Tina?
Yep, sounds great.
Okay. All right, guys, thank you very much. Hope this helped, and I will see you guys again next Saturday.
Thank
right, excellent.
you. Bye.
you.